Hey everybody, Daniel here. Welcome back to the channel where we deal with tough questions. Last week we began this conversation about where do humans get their value and dignity? Do we get it from what we do, what we accomplish, where we work, who we know? We saw from Scripture that humans have value and dignity because we're created in the image of God. It has nothing to do with what we do or what we accomplish, how old we are or where we live. It comes strictly from the fact that we're created in the image of God. Now, if you want to look more at that, check out my last video. But we're going to build upon this today because we want to deal with a hot topic that's centered around this, which is abortion. What does God say about life within the womb? What does God say about abortion as a whole throughout the Scriptures? Now, to be concise and focused today, we're going to look at strictly what Scripture says about life within the womb. Now, there's going to be another video we look at. We look at the scientific evidence of personhood within the womb. But today, we're going to strictly look at what does Scripture say. Now, the foundational beginning point we have to start with is Genesis 1, verse 26 and 27. In this, it states that we, as a humanity, is created in the image of God. Created in the image of God. And being created in the image of God, that's what we looked at in our last video, is it gives everybody, we have value and dignity, all right? You don't get it when you get a certain age, and you don't lose it when you get a certain age. No, you have value and dignity from the very beginning because we're created in the image of God. Now, with that foundational understanding, we're going to be looking at two things today. First, we want to see what does God view about life within the womb? And secondly, what does God view about abortion as a whole? All right? So first, what does God view about life within the womb? Now, I'm going to be looking at Scripture and explain it as we go. We want to look, what does Scripture say about this? Now, we're going to have another video where we look at the scientific evidence, but we want to look at what does Scripture say first, all right? So we'll begin in Psalm 139. I encourage you to read the whole passage, but we're just going to read verse 13 through 16 from Psalm 139. This is David writing, and this is what he says. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depth of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. So you see David here, he's reflecting on who God is and how he relates to God. And one thing he's noting here, this is central, he's noting that God, you see the words, that he formed him, that he made him, that he wove him, that he knit him from his mother's womb. David's noting that he had personhood, that he had value, that he was David from within the womb. He didn't receive value and dignity once he was born, but even from within the womb, he had value and dignity, and God knew him, all right? That's really important. So that's Psalm 139. Now let's read another passage, all right? This is Jeremiah 1, verse 4 and 5. This is what it says. This is Jeremiah speaking. The word of the Lord came to me, saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Hear that. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as prophet to the nations. That's powerful. This is Jeremiah speaking, saying before he was even born, from within the womb, he had value, he had purpose, he had personhood. All right? He didn't receive his purpose once he left the womb. He had it from even within the womb. All right? That he had value and dignity and purpose even from within the womb. Next passage I want to look at is Genesis 25, verse 22 through 23. This is what it says. The children struggled together within her. And she said, if it is thus, why is this happening to me? So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, 2 people from whom you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger. So you see, she's like, there's a struggle within my womb because she had twins. Like, what's going on? The guy's like, there's 2 nations. I mean, nations are going to come forth from these children within your womb. Meaning, what does that mean? They're real people. They're children that are very real within the womb, that they have value, they have dignity, they have an identity and purpose before they're even born. Let me read a few more passages for you guys. Psalm 22, verse 10 states this. From birth, I was cast on you. From my mother's womb, you have been my God. So before I was born, in my mother's womb, I have value and dignity, and you were my God. Luke 1, verse 44 states this. As soon as the sound of your greeting reached my ears, the baby in my womb leaped for joy. Now, in this conversation, what's happening here is you have Mary, the mother of Jesus, who's pregnant with Jesus. She went to go visit her cousin Elizabeth, who was pregnant with John the Baptist at the time. And when Elizabeth sees Mary coming to her, this is what she states. But she's saying John the Baptist leaped within her womb, right, when she saw Mary, then that she was pregnant with Jesus. Now, a few verses before this, Elizabeth tells Mary that she is most blessed because of the child within her, pointing to Jesus. So what's happening in just these few verses, that Elizabeth noting that both John, the baby that leaped within her, and Jesus, who's within Mary, were children, and they had value and dignity, and they were very real from within the womb. They didn't just become persons outside the womb. They were very real within the womb. And lastly, I want to point out Isaiah 49, verse 1, where he states, "Before I was born, the Lord called me. From my mother's womb, he has spoken my name." So you see this reoccurring theme all through Scripture, that humans have value and dignity, yes, but where does it begin? From within the womb. That we have value and dignity and personhood from within the womb. The interesting thing is actually, if you, in both the Old and the New Testament, the words that are used talking about an unborn child and a born child are the same. Now, obviously in the New Testament it's Greek, the Old Testament is Hebrew, but let me give you a couple examples of what I mean by that. In the passage we just read in Luke, all right, with Mary and Elizabeth speaking, when she says the word baby, when the baby within her leaped. That's talking about the baby within the womb. All right, the next chapter, in chapter 2, verse 12, is speaking about baby Jesus. The term baby there is the same term as used here. Why am I pointing this out? Because the same term is used for unborn child within the womb, as well as used for born child, an infant, or babe. It's the same word being used. Now, in the Old Testament, there's many words, but I want to point out one. This one is called Geber. All right, and this word is often refers to a grown man or a mighty warrior, an adult. Okay, that's how it's described. But also, it's used to describe a person within the womb. You see in Job 3, verse 3, Job states this: "Let the day perish wherein I was born, the night in which it was said a man child, a Geber, is conceived." All right, he's using the same word that's used for a grown man or an adult man. He's using the same word to talk about himself within the womb at conception. All right, so one author reflecting on this passage says this: "The child who was born and the child who was conceived are considered the same person. In fact, the term born and conceived are used interchangeably here, suggesting that a person is in view at both conception and birth." Why am I noting all of this? Because in Scripture, there is no difference in personhood from someone within the womb versus someone outside the womb. According to the Bible, all persons are created in the image of God. The only difference is location. If they're in the womb or out of the womb, they all have value and dignity and created in the image of God. Dr. Sean McDowell states this: "Scripture makes no relevant distinction between a preborn fetus and a newborn baby." There's one more powerful verse I want to point out, I meant to point out earlier. This is in the Old Testament, Exodus 21, and this is when God's giving laws, and he gives a law to actually protect pregnant women. And this is what it states. It says, "If people are fighting and hit a pregnant woman and she gives birth prematurely, but there is no serious injury, the offender must be fined whatever the woman's husband demands and the court allows. But if there's serious injury, you are to take life for life." So this is pretty powerful passage. This is God setting a law to protect pregnant women. But what's happening in this scenario? It's saying if a pregnant woman is hit, all right, in some way and gives birth prematurely, but both the mother and the one she gave birth to, which is the child, if they're both okay and safe, there's no injury, they says then let there be a fine that's done, let that be done that way. But if there is a serious injury to either the mother or the child, it says a life for a life. God is putting a protection around the child within the womb and the mother, and he's saying these have value and dignity because they're created in the image of God. So in summary of the first point, what does God view about life within the womb? First, again, we state and we see in Scripture that all humanity is created in the image of God, meaning that we have value and dignity. And then we got to look, well, when does that value and dignity get put into us, or when do we receive that? Not at birth or 5 years down the line. No, you have that value and dignity from the moment of conception from within the womb. The passages we just read pointed to people that we know in Scripture, such as John the Baptist, Jeremiah, David, Isaiah, and they're not stating, oh, I had value when I was doing my purpose here on earth, or I had value and dignity once I became a little older, or when I was born. No, I had value and dignity from when? The moment in the womb, from the moment of conception. So according to Scripture, the only difference from a baby within the womb and outside the womb is location. They both have the same value, the same dignity, and the same personhood. And therefore, they should be protected just in the same way. A baby in the womb and a baby outside the womb should be protected in the same way because they have the same value, and the same dignity, and the same personhood. One thing I want to emphasize here that I mentioned just a minute ago is that according to the Scripture, that life and value and dignity and personhood is from the moment of conception. You don't receive value and life and dignity 6 weeks in the womb, or six months in the womb, or 6 years old. You have value and dignity and personhood from the very moment of conception. So now that we see that life within the womb has value and dignity from the moment of conception, then we want to look at what's the second point, which is, what does God view about abortion? Now, I think it's very clearly in Scripture, but let me point it out 3 ways. All right. First, that the Bible prohibits the taking of innocent life. All right. The Bible prohibits and condemns the taking of innocent life. Secondly, the life within the womb is an innocent life. All right. The life within the womb is an innocent life. Therefore, it follows very clearly from Scripture. If the Scripture prohibits the taking of innocent life, the life within the womb is an innocent life. Therefore, the Bible condemns abortion, which would be the taking of innocent life. So in summary of all of this, what I hope to have you guys see today is this. Life in the womb and outside the womb are life and should be protected. All life, no matter how old or young or where it's located, has value and dignity and created by God. If we're honest with ourselves, it's not hard to see this through Scripture. It's very clear. It's just a matter of, will we align our lives with Scripture and what God says, or what everyone else says? That is where it comes down to. Because if we follow what God says, what comes from it? Life, and life abundantly. When we walk away from God and do what we want to do, what comes from it? Death, hurt, pain, suffering. So that's our call. Will we follow what God says or not? Now, the passage I want to end with in Proverbs 24, and it states this: rescue those who are unjustly sentenced to die. Save them as they stagger to their death. Don't excuse yourself by saying, look, we didn't know, for God understands all the hearts, and He sees you. He who guards your soul knows you knew. He will repay all people as their actions deserve. That's a pretty powerful call, to speak up for those within the womb who have no voice, because they have just as much value and dignity as anybody else, and they are created in the image of God. Now, in the next video, we're going to look more at the scientific evidence of this, life within the womb. But what I hope you see today is simply this: that it's clear from Scripture, all life has value, from the womb to the tomb, and it should be valued and protected. Hope this helps. I'll see you guys next time.